Hey, welcome everybody. This is Pastor Blair Blakesley, blaring the good news of Jesus around the world. Hey, I just want to say welcome to my podcast. And today we're going to be looking at day 22 in the devotional, 40-day devotional challenge. And the challenge today is going to deal with a parent-child relationship. So I'm going to jump in here and just look at Genesis 15, verses 1 through 6. And as we look in this passage, we see a story about Abraham and his son Isaac. But before he had his son Isaac, God made a promise to Abraham that he would have a son. But before we got that promise, Abraham and his wife Sarah, they're trying to have a child. And of course, back in those days, and maybe it's a little bit like that today, but I don't feel like it is today that everybody I have to have a son, carry on our name. But back then it was, that was just we have to have a son. We have to have a son that's going to carry on our name, and so that we're not so forgotten and that sort of thing. So Abraham, it says this: after this, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision. It says, do not be afraid, Abram. I'm your shield, your very great reward. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me, since I remain childless? And the one who will inherit my estate is actually my servant. And Abram said, you've given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. In other words, he's going to get my inheritance. And so, excuse me. So a servant, it's not that Abraham hated his servant, but it's it's a humiliating thing. It's like, the men getting together and around the, wherever the men hang out, in the garage with their tools or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, men get together and say, hey, I got a son, and boy, he's going to inherit all my tools and my car or whatever he has. And, that's kind of like, I don't want to say bragging, but hey, I've got a son, and boy, he's gonna get my stuff when I leave. And then for a father to be going, gee, I don't have a son. It's kind of like a humiliating thing back then. So Abraham is just sharing his concern with God. I don't even have a son to get my inheritance. It's going to be my servant. And then the word of the Lord came to him and said, this man, this servant of yours that you're talking about, is not going to be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood. In other words, someone that's going to come from you through Sarah will be your heir, who will get your inheritance. And God took Abram outside. He said, hey, look up at the sky and count all the stars, if you can even count them, because there's so many of them. Then he said to Abram, so shall your offspring be. In other words, once you have this son, your offspring are going to be numerous, more numerous than the stars that you can count in the sky at night. It's so numerous. In other words, your son, you're going to have, and then he's going to have a son, who's going to have a son, who's going to have a son. And this is going to go on and on and on. And eventually it's going to come to the promised one, and that's Jesus. But we won't go into that part of it now, because I just want to talk about a father-son relationship, Abram and Isaac, and of course ours as well. So here we have, now Abraham gets this promise from God. Look, you're gonna have a son. And and the fact that he said this, and the offspring is going to go on forever and ever and ever. I mean, Abraham believed him. I mean, it says Abraham believed God that this was going to happen. And he had to wait till he was 100 years old before it happened, but it happened. And sometimes I think, was he getting impatient? Well, sure he was. And sometimes in life, we like things right now, and that's our whole life. Our whole world is social media. We get on, click, boom. We can chat with someone in Korea right now, boom, if we wanted to, FaceTime or text or whatever. We could just wherever we want connect, we can get there right away. Things happen. We want something and we just train our mind till we want it now. And God is, that's not how God operates. He's like, yep, you're gonna get this, son. Yep. Well, you're gonna have to wait till you're 100, but it's gonna happen. And so it did. And Abraham and Sarah had the son and named him Isaac. And then in Genesis chapter 22, verses 1 through 19, God tested Abraham. Because when you have to wait so long for something and then you get it, you ever find like your appreciation for it is great? Like, wow, I really appreciate this. It's I don't have my work boots with me, but I have these work boots, and the laces were so long. I mean, they're just so long on them that when I tied my shoe, I just had big loops. Even if I double knotted it, it still hung down, where I would step on them. So I thought, man, I don't like these laces. These shoelaces are terrible. There's got to be a shoelace that's a little bit shorter that when you tie it, you're not dragging on the floor with it. And so I just thought, man, I need to find some shoelaces. And I couldn't find any. And it was a long time coming, but I finally found some shoelaces that were short so that when I tied, there was just hardly any of a loop. And I have to tell you, like if my kid said to me, hey, Dad, what do you want for Christmas? And I told him, I want some shoelaces that are this long, and not this long. They would have thought I was crazy. Like, Dad, no, really, what nice thing do you want? I mean, I was so appreciative when I got those shoelaces. I mean, I told my boss, look at this. This is so weird. I really appreciate these shoelaces. They're not dragging on the ground. They're not getting dirty off what I'm dragging my feet on. It's such a great guy. I really appreciate these shoes. I mean, it's like I really appreciated them. And I'm just thinking about Abraham. Man, we waited till we were 100 years old before we had our kid, and his love was great for Isaac. And God had to look at that and say, "Oh, this is great. He has a real love relationship for his son. I wonder if he loves him more than me." Like God says, man, I love you so much. I'm going to give you blessings, but don't ever take the blessings as if they're your God. You always remember that the gifts you have, the things that you have, I have blessed you with. So love me, the giver, and not the gift from the giver. I mean, don't love more the gift that you get from the one that loves you most. And so he was going to test Abraham. Hey, I wonder if he loves Isaac more than he does me. Now, he didn't say that to Abraham, but he was going to test him. And he says, Abraham, here's what I want you to do. I want you to schedule a time that you and Isaac can get together and travel to this land. It's going to be about a 6-day journey total. And when you get there, I'm going to ask you to sacrifice him on the altar for me. And I'll give you the location and everything. And you know what? Abraham went, and he took a couple servants with him to go with him, and he found the place where God told him to go. And then he was going to leave his servants to go a little far away, however far it was, half a mile, maybe 400 yards, who knows. And he was going to sacrifice his son. But he said to his servants, Isaac and I are going to go and worship the Lord, and we will return. You find that interesting? Abraham knows that God is asking him to sacrifice his son Isaac on the altar. But Abraham remembers something. God promised him his son, and from his son would come a generation of generations of generations of generations of family, more numerous than the stars that you could count in the sky with your eyes. And so he just knew, hey, we're coming back because God ain't going to break his promise. And he said, you know, in his mind, he's like, hey, if I kill him, God can bring him back to life again, because he's not going to let his promise be broken, because that's not how God operates. So sure enough, he goes and gets to the place where he's located. And you know, like I said, he told his servants, hey, you know, we'll be back. And not only that, but when he got his son there, he said, hey, son, okay, we're going to do the sacrifice. We're going to do the offering. And his son's like, well, Dad, where's the lamb? Because, you know, there's always a lamb involved. Where's the lamb? And Abraham said to his son, God will provide the lamb. Just like, here we go. This Abraham's understands the love of the Father, but he understands his promises as well. And he knows it ain't going to be you, son. But then he says to his son, God is asking me to sacrifice you. But in his mind, he knows, son, he's going to carry out his promise. So we're going to trust God. Let us trust God together for him for this. But he's asked me to do this, and I'm going to do it. And just trust him. And the thing is, this relationship that Abraham has with his son, I mean, it's just hard to duplicate such a relationship, that he trusted his dad, even in the point of death. Okay, Dad. And he trusted him. And you know the story. Just before it happened, God intervened and said, okay, Abraham, you do love me more than your son. And then Abraham looked, and there was a lamb caught in the thicket of the brush. His horns were caught into the thicket of the brushy briars and all that stuff. And so he able to take it and sacrifice a real lamb, and not a human being. What I find interesting, though, is the faith that God, or the faith that Abraham had in God to carry out his promise. But since we're talking about father or parent-child relationship, what's really neat is to see the trust the son had for his dad. You know, Isaac, just, you know, as you think about this 6-day journey that he was on with his dad, and just the obedience that he showed his dad, the obedience. You know, it's like there wasn't a whole lot, there was no temper tantrums. There was no arguing and bickering. Like, and I'd like to say I was a perfect son with my mom and my dad, but I wasn't, you know, but I certainly have learned. I can remember throwing a temper tantrum. I can remember my parents, you know, there's the time of their struggle financially, and there's 4 of us kids, and there's this movie that came out, and it was an animal movie by Wild Kingdom or you know, whatever, some show. It was going to be on a theater, and I wanted to go to that so bad. And my parents were like, hey, you know, we're not going to be able to go. We just can't afford to take the 6 of us to this movie. But I wanted to go. And rather than just be obedient to my dad and my mom's wishes, I had to crawl underneath my bed crying and just, you know, bawling my tears from my eyes, and I really want to go to this movie. And I don't even know how old I was. I was maybe 8 years old or whatever. And I'm sure, I mean, my parents, they felt horrible. I mean, I remember them feeling horrible that we couldn't go. But I just have to wonder if they were like, if there wasn't an element of disappointment, like son, we want you to trust us. When we say things can't happen, they can't happen, and then accept accept it and be okay with it, and know that this movie is not what's controlling our future. It's all about relationship with one another and with God. So I just admire the relationship that Abraham had with his son. And so here's my challenge today. That if you're a parent and have some kids, I don't care how old you are as a parent. I don't care how old your child is. You know, if your child's 70 years old, and you're able to get around or whatever, then spend some time with them. But maybe you've got a 4-year-old and you're going to do something. I don't know. Maybe it won't work with a baby. Because of the challenge is this, that parents, you pick one of your kids, maybe start with the oldest one, because if you start with the middle one, then the oldest one and younger one's probably going to think, oh, you're going to start with your favorite one first or whatever. So if you start with the oldest one, well, you've got a thought process you can stick with. I'm starting with the oldest. I'm going to work my way down. We're going to do this, over a period of a month or whatever, so you get all your kids involved. But take one of them and you go out with them and do something that they like. Think about their hobby, something they would enjoy. I mean, it could be a number of things, like maybe you want to go, if they're a runner and you go jogging with them. Like, hey, let's go jogging together, and then we'll stop and get ice cream afterwards. Or you take them out for lunch, or you go play putt-putt or something that they enjoy doing. And a movie, I'm not always big on the movie, but if you go to a movie that they really want to see, and then just stop somewhere, either before the movie for something to eat or something afterward, because during that time that you're together, I want you to just have a conversation with them. And not like, okay, you've been really bad lately. I mean, this is a conversation of compliments. And you have to prepare for this, because sometimes if you try and think of it right off the bat, you kind of stammer with your words and it looks like you can't really think of anything positive to say or whatever. So you just start off with, okay, I'm gonna say 3 things about my kid that I look at as being really positive. And you can just say, like with my one daughter, I would say, hey, you've got to, I just want to say how much I appreciate your loving heart for other people. Like you don't approach them with this judgmental, like if they're not living the Christian life like you are, and they're sinners, bad people, you don't look at them that way. You look at them as, these are people that deserve to be loved. And that's something I appreciate about you. And you invest into their lives and you make them feel important. And I just want you to know that that's a God-given thing that you have, and that you're able to just be able to connect with people and love on them. And when you do that, you encourage them and you give them a look of the light of Christ that's in you. And God can use your gift just to help draw them into relationship with the Lord. And I admire that about you. And then come up with 2 more things to say about them as well. So that's the challenge. And do it. And just see if you don't have a better connection afterwards. And just an increased respect and a love for them. So, and kids, if you're watching this, I just want to say, here's your challenge. I want you to take your parents out. And if you can't drive, then they drive. And you just say, hey, I want to do something with just you and I. Now, look, when you present it to them, they have to be sitting down when you tell them, hey, I just want to do something just you and I. They have to be sitting down. Because if they faint, when you say that, we don't want them to fall hard on the floor. If they're sitting on the couch, then they can just go boom and out and just land on the pillow on the couch. So, and do this. And you're like, I don't like to be seen with my parents. All right, just get over it. All right, just get over it and do something with them. And then the challenge is the same as whatever you're doing. Just take the time and say, look, as a kid, it's hard for kids to say nice things about their parents, but It probably leaves you wondering sometimes, I wonder what my kid really thinks of me. Well, today I'm going to share it with you. Just don't tell anybody that I said this, because I don't want them to know that I gave in. No, I mean, that's sometimes that's the mentality of a kid, but some kids, I just see them loving their parents, and they give them a hug, give them a kiss, and they don't care what other people think. But some kids do. And I'm just saying, please, in the name of Jesus, push all that aside and just have a fun time with your parent. And then at some point say, hey, I want to just tell you something that I appreciate about you. And here's 3 things. I know we don't always see eye to eye on stuff, but you provide for me, and I appreciate that. I take it for granted sometimes, like I expect you to take care of me, but you don't have to. If you don't want to, you don't have to, but you do. And I appreciate that. It just shows me that you do love me. And number 2, I appreciate the fact that you challenge my thinking. Because sometimes I get locked in my mind that this is the way it has to be done. And then you say, nope, that's not a good idea. And you present to me another option. And I fight it. But to be honest with you, when I get off by myself and I start thinking about it deep inside, I know that you're right. And I just want to say, I just want to acknowledge that I remember and know that sometimes, even though I bicker, you're right. And you say those things to challenge my thinking, because you want me to be the best that I can be. So think of that. Or you come up with your own 3 things. Don't just make up something. I mean, let it be real. Don't Google it. Okay. Get the real thing. So that's the challenge, but I want to go one step further, because you might have, parent or child, you might have a strained relationship with your parent or with your child. And I'm saying, still take them, still ask to take them out. And then I would address the elephant in the room, and just say, hey, listen, thank you for getting together with me. Because you know what, I know that we don't always get along. I know that we're in opposition, and we kind of debate on issues or what I am allowed to do or should do. And there's that debate and how much freedom I should give you and how much freedom I shouldn't. We have that. But I just want you to know, as my parent or as my child, I'm pushing all that aside right now just to say, I really love you and appreciate you. And maybe there needs to be an apology, in this conversation. And I just want to say, I'm sorry for how I blew up at you. And maybe that's because our attitudes or personalities are so much alike that we butt heads, but I want to push that aside and just let you know, I'm sorry for how I snapped at you, because that's disrespectful. And I'm going to go the extra mile to make sure that I'm putting effort in to treating you with love, dignity, and respect. And I hope that you can do that for me. And I want to see our relationship move in a positive way, with respect and obedience with one another. So, and maybe it's, the apology or saying, I'm sorry, or whatever words you have to say, but don't let this go by. Don't do nothing, because these relationships are going to last till one of you die, and you don't want to have hanging over your head. Oh my goodness. I never sat down with my kid. I never sat down with my parent and said, listen, I really love you. I really do. I don't want to ever have a regret in my heart that I didn't say I love you enough. So that's the challenge. And trust me, I've been a part of funerals where there's this strained relationship between a parent and a child, and the parent dies, and the child is full of guilt and regrets of what they wish they would have done, and didn't. And don't put that on yourself. Do it today. All right. Hey, God loves you. So do I. I'm going to pray that there's positive things that come from this. And if something does, I would love to hear about it. And you can message me. So, hey, love you. God bless you.